My friends, this is Trevor. As you know, we do not accept sponsorship on the podcast. I want to make sure that I always deliver on my goal and intention, which is to provide unadulterated, incredible conversations that add value as a high-performing human being and as an entrepreneur. So, to maintain that level of integrity, I have decided to never accept sponsorship on the podcast. Now, that means it's all self-funded and it's all done internally by my team out of pocket as a labor of love. There is a way that you can support us though. I am starting a black card label mastermind, whatever you want to call it, an inner circle, the Trevor Chapman mastermind, wherein I'll be giving you everything I've ever created. You'll have direct access to me. I'll be showing you how I went from a 0 to 1 million followers in 45 days, 0 to top 5 podcast in 20 days, 0 to 8-figure sellout in 12 months, 0 to $1 million in 90 days online. Everything that I'm doing, you're going to see how I'm doing it. And because it is not officially launched yet, and I'm pre-launching it to my loyal podcast listeners, if you go to trevorchapman.com/podcast VIP, you will get early access. trevorchapman.com/podcast VIP. Welcome, my friends, to the Trevor Chapman Show. This is Trevor, and this is our place, yours and mine, where we talk and learn from the best minds on this beautiful earth about entrepreneurship, achievement. We are purveyors of the good life, curating environments that promote and even demand kairos moments of success, happiness, and euphoric achievement. I mean, we work relentlessly to attain levels of the highest performance in business and life. Here is to our collective happiness and to celebrating our human experience. My friends, it's time to run. Welcome, my friends, to the Trevor Chapman Show. This is Trevor. We are excited today to speak with Arvind Raichur. Arvind, thank you for joining us. Absolutely. So, Arvind, for my audience,
Trevor, thank you for having me.
Will undoubtedly be familiar with you. Others won't. Give us a quick 60,000-foot overview of who you are, and more importantly, who you were 20 years ago, and the last couple of decades that have brought you to who you are today and what you're known for.
Sure, Trevor. I guess who I am is a serial entrepreneur. I'm someone that's very passionate about innovating, particularly as it pertains to the internet and internet technologies. 20 years ago, I didn't know that I would be still in the internet space talking to today. I mean, it's interesting. I was an attorney, I like to say in a previous life, because it feels so long ago, before I began my career in the internet. But my first company was all about creating great legal information resources and communities surrounding getting the best free legal information into the hands of the consumer generally, because it tends to be a scary process, and people just don't know where to turn if they're confronted with a legal issue. It's never the television or movie scenario where you suddenly inherited a bunch of money from someone you'd never heard of. It's usually something quite scary.
And so that was in the early days. You were involved with that, and we're talking about. So interestingly, one of my partners in a few of my companies is Ryan Davies. He started Found.com back in the 90s. I think probably a contemporary. And he was attempting to organize the internet as well and do it in a different manner than the search engines of the time. Like if you remember Metacrawler and all these companies, they were, you paid for where you wanted to show up on the search results.
Yep.
And he was trying to do more of like this freedom type of democratic type of system with Found. And when Google came along, they just kind of destroyed it. And so he pivoted and turned into a inventory system and sold that. But what's your story then with your internet, and for people who aren't familiar, millennials that grew up with Wikipedia, that aren't familiar with the madness that the internet once was, fill us in on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, especially in the early days, uh, as you described it, there wasn't just. I mean, we think of search right now, and we think of Google primarily, right? But back then, there were countless search engines. There were probably 25, 30 major search engines that you could go to, from, as you mentioned, Metacrawler to Webcrawler to Excite, Lycos, LookSmart, Ask Jeeves, Dogpile. I
Hmm.
mean, the list goes on and on. Yahoo being the primary one during that period of time before Google. And I think it's really interesting how the internet has evolved. And in it back in that period of time, it really was kind of chaotic, trying to find good and relevant content and information. And I do believe that Google really obviously was the best solution and really drove a lot of those players out of the market. But everybody was truly looking for how to get great content into the hands of the average person who is looking for it. And I mean, I think that brings us forward to today. And you ask who I am and what I'm trying to do, and that's really what Mr. Owl is all about. It's a company that is designed to give that user experience what's needed right now, which is give users the ability to control their overall internet experience by bringing together the best of social search and digital content
So it's like the
organization
Google
all in
of
one
Pinterest
place.
and Dig and all of these things put together, or what? Like, how would you describe it?
Yeah, I think a lot of our users describe it as a bridge between, Google, Pinterest, and say Wikipedia, because what the technology, a simple way to describe it, what it allows you to do is create your own, say, internet topic playlists. So, like a music playlist allows you to gather together all the songs that you're passionate about, based off your mood or genre or what have you. What Mr. Owl's technology allows you to do is collect knowledge and information, put it into like a playlist form, if you will, and then the entire collection becomes searchable. So, what's also special about it is it doesn't just have to be websites, it can be Word docs or PDFs or Excel spreadsheets or photos or videos. And then the entire collection is searchable, and it can be organized with topics, subtopics, and it can be annotated. So each link that you put in, as an example, you're not stuck with how a search engine describes it via the algorithm. You can actually change the description and say, this website is about this, or this document is about that, or this website is valuable to me for this small subsection, or this small subject matter. And that's why it's important. And then in doing that, and in creating these collections that are then searchable for yourself, you can make them private or public. And what's really cool and what we see is people putting together internet topic playlists, if you will, on all sorts of subject matter, whether it's health or nutrition or fitness or pop culture or their favorite celebrity or travel. It's really, really cool. And then you can collaborate with others. So, say you have a group that's interested in going to Rome, you can see what the community has already created, real users, real people, what they say are the best things to do and where to go. But you can also put together your own if you'd like, and that becomes really fun, and it's
How
very
many years are
interesting
you guys into
to
the development of Mr. Owl?
well, I actually have 5 patents on the technology itself, so I've been thinking about it. I like to describe this as my life's work, because the very first patent took me more than a decade to get, but it's fairly significant in how it deals with the problems that we're talking about today. I find it fascinating that people are looking at all the problems of social media and didn't realize how these algorithms that are in place in traditional social media and search are designed not just to gather information for good purposes of trying to get you the best information, but are also designed to gather a whole little dossier of information on you as a user, and that information is not always used in our best interests. And I think that people are really seeking a technology like Mr. Owl, and I think it's going to be one of those technologies as we move forward that is used by people because it allows them to be in control. Think of it this way: it is human intelligence before
Well, so
AI, or at
well, I was
least,
going to say, so
yeah. Go ahead.
as a businessman, you don't see the value
Yeah.
in the data that you collect on the users and the ability then that, because it's a two-edged sword, right? Yeah, I've
Right.
gone to both extremes. At one point in time, 3, 4, 5 years ago, it was almost impossible to find me online. I was as private as I could be. I went through a period where, in college, I was a hobbyist hacker. And those days brought me forward to just complete non-existence online. And now a lot of my success depends on how well people can find me online. So I've been on both ends of the spectrum, and I found one of the fascinating things that occurred to me years ago. I had a neighbor when I had a security company, an office mate basically, and he had the largest digital content production company at the time on the planet. So this is when Newsstand first came out with Apple. And so they were taking print magazines
Yep.
and digitizing them. And now, we take digital magazines and we turn them into print. But this is
Yep.
this is the era before that. So this is all flip-flopped. And he was telling me about, that year of business. And I found it fascinating that the data he collected and was able to sell far surpassed any revenues he made from the advertising, from the actual purchasing of the magazines, etc. And for many people, that created an experience where, prime examples when Target came under fire because they were able to tell you that you were pregnant before a biological test could tell you were pregnant, because they could analyze trillions of data points across this entire species that we're a part of and say, these are all the things they have in common. This woman is in her first trimester and we know it before her body can tell us. And that's convenient in so many areas. So I'm giving you a long preamble, and then I'm going to close my mouth because I'm really curious what your thoughts are on this. And so I've wrestled with both sides of this margin because I understand the value that it brings, the convenience that it brings. I understand how it's scary, especially in the wrong hands. And so as a guy that lived in Russia and Ukraine for 5 years, I understand how state control can absolutely destroy not just an individual, but us as a collective. I've seen it firsthand. So when I was approached by Rafael, this entity owned by the Israeli Defense Force, to help bring the Iron Dome into America, I had very mixed thoughts. The Iron Dome, they touted at the time, Empress as a software, was the most advanced technology on the planet. It kept Israel, alive as a country, identifying, predicting threats prior to, not the moment before it happened, but in some instances weeks before it happened based on the data. And so we brought it in specifically to stop school shootings. And this was my mentality. Yes, this is 1984, but if 1984 is going to happen irregardless of me, it's going to happen. The powers at hand are just way too powerful. So I can either help kind of shape it, or I can be a victim of it. And I wanted to help shape it. And I thought I can do that through stopping school shootings. And when the school board shut that down because no one wants us to predict whether or not their children are, at risk, we tried to do it with the first smart city in America in Utah, Midvale, Utah, with the sheriff that was elected. That fell through as well. And so I look at the situation now and I see the value in the data as an advertiser. I understand also the contempt that I have for it as a consumer. And so I'm on both sides of the coin. I'm curious how you are as a potential source of the data. And as a businessman, how that's not valuable to you.
Sure. No, and I'm not saying it's not valuable to me at all, Trevor. I think what I'm saying is there have to be ethical considerations that people really talk about and think about before you run down this path. I think people, particularly the state of social media and search right now, people are pulling back and going, wait, what's going on right now? And it's not because they didn't realize that, there was data being collected. It's that they there's a difference between data collection and, okay, you're going to serve me some valuable, ads or ads of things only that I'm interested in. That's fine. I don't think anybody has an issue with that. But wait, you're collecting so much data that you know what trimester I'm in? No, that's too far. Not without telling me first, not without letting me know what you're collecting and what can be revealed by that, right? So there's an ethics component that just isn't even being talked about right now. Instead, they're going, okay, well, let's just correct this problem and privacy. Well, okay, yeah, but let's have a conversation about what are the ethics. Okay, we can go so far as, if you're going to serve me ads, I'd rather they were ads on things that I'm interested in. That's fine. But wait, you're going to gather so much personal information that not only you can, tell things about my physiology and my biology, that's too far. And wait a minute, you're going to gather so much data that you can actually shape the way that I'm thinking and manipulate me in ways that I hadn't thought about. I mean, that's what this conversation is about right now. Data collection within bounds, within reason, for appropriate purposes, as well as, transparency with respect to what data are you gathering on me and how will it be used. I don't think that I think that that's what I'm saying. I think that's the conversation that needs to happen.
I agree 100% that conversation needs to happen. Let me tell you where I feel about this. I am a believer that with rare, and I mean rare exception, I'm talking about, and this is a analogy, but there is I can't remember. There's an element. It's like the fifth most, what's the word I'm looking for? This is the fifth most whatever element on this planet. There's more of this than any other elements. So it's number 5 in that line. And but the problem is that when it can only be held together under extreme pressure. So we've never actually seen it. We just know it exists near our core, but we've never seen it. For the first time, they actually saw this element because it was encapsulated in a diamond. So it's this incredible thing that this happened like a month ago. And so I'm talking about with that type of rare exception, I believe that absolute power absolutely corrupts. And I wonder, so my question is, do you Robin Hood it as much as possible? Or, I mean, how like, what is the real solution? I cannot see the government and private entities ever saying, you know what, you're right, we're not going to collect this info on me and you. I just don't see it. I can't see a world in which someone with all that control relinquishes it. Like, do you see that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, maybe I'm the eternal optimist, Trevor, but I do. I think when we designed Mr. Owl, the whole point behind it is that, look, it's a wiser internet. It's a wiser way of doing things, and one of the ways, and it's not that we don't use algorithms, and it's not that we don't intend on showing people, content, including advertisements that they may be interested in, but we also have other options too, which is, you could have an ad-free environment. You could have a completely private environment. But one of the other things that we think about is consider that if you're doing a search on something that you know a lot about, Trevor, right? I mean, maybe it's, I don't know what subject matters you would consider yourself an expert
Mountaineering.
But for me, okay, mountaineering, great. So if you were to do a search on, pick your favorite search engine, it doesn't matter. You do a search and you look at the results, and how many times have you gone, you know what? That's not quite right. The very best site for this is not appearing.
Correct.
Here, right?
Yes.
And we see that happen to every one of us all the time. Now, that works really well when we know the subject matter. Like mountaineering, we go, oh, okay, you're missing like 5 of the sites. And we go, oh, search engine, it's not you, it must be me. And then we redo our search query a few times till we get the site to pop up that we were looking for. But with Mr. Owl, you literally have the ability to add in links wherever you want, to whatever query you want, and reorder them as you would like. And that's powerful. And then delete the ones that are crap. Now, it works in mountaineering because you know the subject matter. But let's say it's a subject matter that you don't know about. So maybe you've never been to the Galapagos Islands and you're going. Now you type your query into your favorite search engine and you get a set of results. how do you know those are the best results? Maybe there's a guy who knows the Galapagos Islands going, oh my God, you're missing the 5 most important sites on this page. That's what has brought about the revolution of influencers, right? What do we look for? I mean, 10 years ago, Trevor, you like to, I've heard multiple podcasts, you like to talk about how it was and how it is now. But think about it. About a decade ago, we didn't even have influencers.
Right.
Why did they come about? Well, they came about because we were more interested in what real people had to say than what we were
corporations
that was fed to us
yeah.
by corporations
100%.
and algorithms going, hey, these are the answers. We're like, no, I want a real person to tell me what the information is. Well, that's kind of the ethos around Mr. Owl. We allow people to create their own internet topic playlists, and we allow them to share them with others, and they're discoverable by everyone. And if you want to contribute to the community at large, all of that information is aggregated on Mr. Owl. So, if I've got 100 people who have created topics on, say, the Galapagos Islands, the very best of that information is aggregated for the community as a whole as well. And then everybody gets the benefit of that.
It's like a Wikipedia of the internet, because you used Wikipedia as an example, and as you're describing this is what I see. It is the public coming together to aggregate collections of their topics that they're familiar with. And then, like you said, there's other uses. They can keep them private. They can share them with specific groups. But it's okay. It's okay. I get it now when you say it's human intelligence over artificial intelligence.
Exactly.
Okay, makes sense. So let me ask you a couple questions then. Tell me whether or not this is too far. That buddy of mine who owned Pixel Mags, that company, he made a lot of money by selling to Experian, who then sold to Porsche, a list of like 300 people who had spent more than half an hour reading about the new Porsche that came out that year. Because those are highly targeted individuals. Like that's a great lead. And these people had no clue why all of a sudden Porsche started reaching out to them. Is that too far?
I think it depends on whether they were transparent about what they were doing and letting people know, hey, we're tracking your behavior so that we can go all the way down and take this data and sell it to, a specific corporation. I think that that is different than, say, when a search engine just generically goes, okay, you're interested in the subject matter, and without identifying you specifically to the company, it serves up an ad because you might be interested in the particular thing. Mm-hmm. That's different, right? That's giving your identity to the company as opposed to taking the company's advertisement and showing it to you without telling the company who you are. It's because you might be interested in their product.
Yeah.
Right?
So
two different things.
Right. So I'm playing devil's advocate here, just so you know. I'm not this, corporate behemoth advocate, that wants to allow the Taliban to control what we do. Not at all. But I am curious. This is a topic that really does fascinate me because privacy is a big thing right now. And so I consider that if we had the ability, like the longevity that it would take to kind of write out the Arvind algorithm, because you're a series of mathematical equations, as am I. And if you knew the variables that influenced my behavior, then you could eventually predict whether or not I'm even going to get diabetes or this or that. Like, there's good that can happen by understanding the math behind the algorithm behind Trevor Chapman, the human being.
Sure.
And if you're able to do that, you can, if you're a good person, help shape my life so that I am healthy, happy, and fulfilled. Do you agree with that concept?
Yes. I agree that can happen. I think the question is, I think here's the difference. Should I do that whether you give me permission to or not?
Right.
And I would say no.
Yes.
That's the distinction that I'm trying to draw. I'm saying, yeah, there's all these wonderful things that can happen, but there's also some negative things that can happen. But the conversation that needs to take place first is what should happen and what should the consumer or the public or the individual user of the technology know about it before they start using it. So yeah, I can make your life wonderful, but you've got to understand that in order to do that, I've got to gather all this information, and then here's how it will be used, and we believe that that will make your life wonderful. But if you don't consent to that, then maybe I mean, I think that's the thing. We have to go into it, consciously and understanding what's going on. I think that, maybe some of the things that happened with regard to everything that's being talked about right now with social media and search is, people going, oh, well, of course it's going to be better. And of course you're going to want it. And, going a little bit and not going a little bit and definitely going too far with respect to that without the user actually understanding what was happening. And that's the problem. User understands it, fine. And user agrees to it, fine. But if the user doesn't understand what's being collected and how it's going to be used, that's a problem.
Well, so how do you respond then when Henry Ford said, if I left what we did up to the public, we'd still be riding horses? And let me walk back a little bit.
I love that quote. Yeah.
Because I feel that that's kind of the epicenter of this whole thing. Because we're talking about privacy, but privacy is the superficial issue. Now, it's the deep philosophical issue, but that's superficial. People aren't doing this because they want to invade your privacy. So that is a symptom of why they're doing this. They're doing it because ultimately it puts money in their pocket, and most dollars spent are happy dollars. You spend them happily. You're not being forced to spend them. A sad dollar is when you're in contract and you were bamboozled into that contract. You don't want to be giving them that dollar, but you have to. Those companies in this day and age quickly go out of business. So most dollars are happy dollars. So the outcome of collecting all this, example, 15 years ago or whenever it was when I started knocking doors in college, the guy that was out on the door with me was like, hey, man, most of these people don't know that they actually need what we have. So you have to help them make the decision. And I was like, show me what you mean by that. He said, okay. So we knocked on a guy's door, sold him pest control. He's like, all right, $75 up front. The guy's like, or $50 up front, whatever it was. He's like, I only have 100. He's like, no problem. And he snatched the $100 bill out of his hand. I'm saying in that term, he didn't reach out, it was handed to him. And then the guy was like, what about my change? He's like, oh, we'll credit it to your account. Don't worry about it. And the guy just kind of stood there. And then he went on. And I could tell that the guy was thinking like, I'd probably rather have that $50 back. But eventually the decision was made for him that it would credit to his account, and he went on with his life, didn't think about it, and it was a convenience to him. So where I, playing devil's advocate, I'm coming in is that privacy is one of those collateral damages that I would love if it was not, if they were mutually exclusive. So we have to kind of break down the barriers of privacy in order for the greater good, which is that mathematical equation that I'm talking about, ultimately to come about. And so do we, by not relinquishing privacy, hinder human progress? So,
boy, that was a lot there. Let me see whether I can unpackage it, and I'm gonna approach it a little bit different. Okay. I'm gonna take the exact same quote. We're pretty close on Henry Ford, which I also love, which is, I don't ask my customers what they want, because if I asked them what they want, they would tell me faster horses, right?
Yeah.
So that the difference and the distinction that I'm drawing is what he was speaking to is how he innovates. And that's how I always took that quote. I went, Henry Ford looked at it and went, hey, is there a better solution? Is there something that would benefit the community as a whole if it was invented, if it was created? And of course, the automobile is what he was thinking about, and creating a solution for people to replace, the horse and buggy. And so the automobile was his solution. The difference in what has happened nowadays is, social media and search went into your home in the middle of the night and took your horse and replaced it with an automobile without asking you. Mm-hmm. That's the distinction that I'm talking about. It's one thing for him to go, I've got an innovative solution. I'm going to share that solution, and if you want to purchase it, you can purchase it. And I'm going to tell you why it's better than the horse and buggy. And here you go. And when presented with that option, we still get to choose. I may want to choose the horse and buggy for whatever reason. And but I may see the solution that you've created and that you've innovated upon as a better solution that will make my life better, and that's why I'm going to choose it. And I think that's what I'm really speaking about, right? I think that what's happened has been thrust upon us as opposed to us being given the choice of it. And that's where I come back to, again, human wisdom, human intelligence, has to play a part in any algorithm that is being used, and we need to be transparent about what those algorithms are doing.
Yeah, so I love that. And again, I keep giving this preamble because I don't want to sound like I'm Satan himself. You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, look, I'm playing the devil's advocate here, but so I hear that 100%. Let me go back a second to this thought I had as you were saying that. Shoot, I don't know if I'm gonna. Oh man, it had to do with Elon Musk and something about artificial intelligence. Okay, I wish I could recall. I can't recall. So my question then goes to you: is this question then about absolute power? Does it absolutely corrupt? Because the day may come when you have trillions, and we can't even fathom what a trillion is, but trillions of data points, and someone can come to you and say, "Hey, we can tell these people whether or not they will die of cancer in a year. And if we tell them right now, you have access to the information, we can tell them and then we can help save them. But you have to breach their privacy." Oh, I remember what it was. Yep. Here's my question. Okay. I've never watched an episode of Keeping Up with the Kardashians. I don't have cable, but frankly, if I did, I'm not that interested in what the Kardashians are doing other than when they market on Instagram. I'm curious about that because it's, they've got this stronghold on America. In a world where almost everyone, other than the Arvins and the other guests and the listeners of this podcast, are keeping up with the Kardashians, is it even possible to have a rational conversation about privacy? Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, people would take a flat screen TV and give up a bunch of their rights just to have a flat screen TV. I mean, I feel that society's kind of walking that way. We're not thinking for ourselves as a collective. We're giving up all of our liberties for comfort, and that's making us not fulfilled and not happy. And so what we want to do is we just want more of the brain-numbing pills and potions and fast food and everything else, and the Kardashians that just continues to whirlwind us further down and down. Now, I don't want to get all conspiracy, especially since we know that privacy is an issue right now, and I don't want to be pegged as a potential target by anybody. But have you ever read Silent Weapons for Secret Wars?
No, I have not.
Okay, look that up. It was a report that was done by, if I remember right, it was a dozen Harvard professors commissioned by the U.S. government shortly after World War II. And what they said is this: with the advent of radio and television, we can no longer control the dissemination of information. How do we control the population with these new mediums that are giving out information that we don't want them to have? And they likened it. Literally, one of the quotes is talking about you and I as beasts of burden. And it says in there that just like we know when you have to stop firing a machine gun in a plane because the vibration will eventually shake loose the nuts and bolts that hold it together, we can tell you the exact round that will cause that to happen. And so we stop before then. In a similar manner, we can take the economy and artificially increase prices to the point where eventually the people will say, bring in an expert, allow that person to take away our rights just to give us cheap gas and coffee again. So you got to look it up, man. It's crazy stuff. Do it on like DuckDuckGo or something. So what I'm saying is, cause is noble and just. Do you think that the population as a whole is noble and just enough to rally behind it? And not innately. Innately, yes. As human beings, I don't know if you've heard my podcast where I talk about the awe and wonder. I get goosebumps when I talk about what we really are. It's amazing. It's the slippery slope of language doesn't allow me to actually describe us in our full beauty. But there are a lot of look at the situation we have right now with all this privacy. Trade dollars for liberty. Trade, privacy for power. Like how do we even fight that?
I think, Trevor, you asked me whether there's an appetite or a hunger for this type of technology that I'm working on and that we're getting great adoption on, and I got to say yes, and I would say it specifically to uh, the millennial generation in particular. I mean, I think this technology is coming about primarily for them and, the generation to come after them. Because if you think about what they do and why they do it and how they're trying to make their own mark and their impact on the world, my company is composed 90% of millennials. And so the experience that we have created is designed specifically for them. Think about the most popular, apps and technologies out there. What is Uber? Uber's born out of ride sharing. What is Airbnb? It's born out of, sharing a bed or a room or,
Couch surfing.
that's really what it was born out of. It's this idea that we've got this global community, we have global information, global knowledge, global resources that need to be shared. I mean, I think we just in the same way that we love to share playlists on Pandora or Spotify and are willing to share, hey, these are the best, think about review sites like Yelp and things like that. These are sites that bring together people who want to review and share their knowledge about specific things. I mean, that's what the community is interested in. I go back to my previous statement about influencers. Why are they important? You gave the quintessential example of influencers when you talk about the Kardashian family. I mean, they are able to influence millions and millions of people with social media because those people are interested in what they have to offer, whatever it is that they are drawing upon, their lives or fashion or makeup or whatever it is that they would like to share. Though their audience is very interested in that, but it can be so many different influencers out there on so many different subjects. But what it is it's the millennial generation looking for real answers by real people. That's what they're most interested in. And that's what this technology is designed to do, is propagate that type of information. And where it differs from something like Wikipedia is you don't have to be a writer. Like in Wikipedia, if you think about it, it's used by millions and millions and millions of people, yet the number of editors that are actually writing that content is so small compared to the usage. With regard to our technology, you don't have to be a writer. You just have to know and be able to identify what the best information and content is and group that together in a useful form. And in doing it for yourself, you're actually doing it for the benefit of the community as a whole. So I think there is a power there. We're definitely seeing lots of traction with regard to it. So ultimately, hopefully, what we do, is create a tool that is for this generation that's coming up. And I think it's what they want.
Love it, man. I love that. That's a great mission. So I've got a question for you then. Regarding privacy, there are cryptocurrencies that give you absolute privacy, but they don't give you the returns that less private, slower, more adjunct cryptocurrencies give you. And so they're thoroughly ignored. And so how I feel like that's somewhat applicable to the conversation about privacy, money versus privacy. I wish that it was just the big behemoths that wanted to, trade privacy for money, but I'm seeing this be a little bit more widespread. So my question is, what is the solution? I'm a libertarian, by the way. Back in the day, I ran all over my city throwing up Ron Paul signs everywhere. And so, because I know right now as I talk, I know how I sound. And I'm sounding this way for the sake of the conversation. But it's not who I am at my heart. But how do we bring about this concept that what you are preaching is more valuable to the collective than a short-term dopamine shot with the right ad or a right, whatever placement of content or whatever, or a few dollars extra brings instead? Like how do you do that? Because while the millennials, I agree that They've got all kind, totally different, man. They grew up they grew up with the internet as a primary thing. They don't know who Oprah is, like, but they know who Logan Paul is. Like, this is a whole different group. But with that has also come some of the things that come to all cultures when you are succeeding at the highest levels. There's, a lot of my contemporaries didn't go through 2008 because they were in school during 2008. They've only known excellent times. So how do you solve for that again? Absolute power absolutely corrupts, and money often supersedes liberties and privacy and common sense, frankly.
That's a really big question, Trevor, and I don't know that I've got an exact answer for you that's a solution. I think, again, what I believe and what I am thinking is going to come about, everybody keeps talking Web 2.0, what is it, what's it going to be, what's the next evolution of the internet. I think it really comes down to some of the core things that we put into this technology. I'm sure there will be other people that are trying to create similar solutions, different solutions, but I think at the heart of it, what you have to be able to do is allow people to control their own internet experience. And I think that's what's been stripped away, and that's what we're seeing. And I do think it's what's desired by people out there. And I think that when we go forward, it's not that you move forward with fear of the technological changes that are happening. It's that you embrace those technological changes that are happening, right? Because that's how we move forward as a society. You just must always be considering what are the ethics that are involved now that the technology has changed around us. Okay, and I think that's really what I'm speaking to, and I think that's what we've been talking about. This whole discussion. And I think it's really cool.
Yeah, dude, it's pretty phenomenal. So to kind of switch it up a little bit, if we went back to the beginning of your career online, how did you identify that the web, what was bubbling up? Did you have a conversation in a coffee shop or in a public library that this internet thing is really going to take off and there's a need? Like, what happened?
I think with respect to my getting into the internet at first, I saw a deficiency with respect to particularly legal information, what was available, how you could find it, how you could interact with it online. You just couldn't. Let me say it this way: my real beginning of getting online was I was working as an attorney. I'm working on a big case. I needed to find an attorney in a neighboring state. And the way we did it, back in the day was you went and you grabbed the literal book edition, which rated every attorney in the country. And you looked for who was in that area. And the partner I was working with is like, I can't remember the guy's name, but I'm sure if you get me the best rated, go get the book and get the best rated lawyers in the Dallas area, I'll recognize the name and we'll give him a call. Well, and I went to get the book out of the firm library, and it was a big law firm, almost 100 lawyers, and someone had taken it, so we didn't have it. So I went online, and this is before Google. And let me say this: it was the most frustrating experience. The biggest player in the space listed every attorney alphabetically, without regard to geography or practice area. So needless to say, after spending about 45 minutes in a futile effort to even find a attorney in the Dallas-Fort Worth area for the type of law that we were needing, I was like, this is useless. No one has organized information in the way that's valuable to actual users. So that really began my thought process of the very first company that I formed and later sold. It was what's the best experience? What is needed? How do we interact with information? And I think that really began my journey. And I've been on it ever since, thinking about how to use the internet in our lives and how to make our lives better by using this wonderful and amazing technology that's available to us.
So do you think that the blockchain are we in the same stages that you were when you were organizing information, or the seed, the conception of that idea? Are we in a similar stage right now with blockchain tech?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's just at the very beginning. I mean, I am so excited to see what comes, but it's in infancy right now.
So you think that if someone wants to make a dent, they could simply say, okay, I'm going to create a search engine for the blockchain that's ran on the blockchain, or I'm going to create a Stripe that's ran on the blockchain, or I'm going to create any of these tools that we use every day, just create them on top of the blockchain, and it's like an immediate home run?
Oh, I wouldn't say that. I mean, we've already seen that. It's not that everything that was born in that beginning period of the internet survived
Yeah.
or was good. I think that the technologies that survive, think about how people are going to use it, what the ultimate value is to the end user, and what problems they're solving. And I think those are the technologies that really are long lasting and grow deep roots and are meaningful.
Gotcha. Fascinating, man. So where do you, if you are on your deathbed in 40 or 50 years, or who knows, 100 years, like it's crazy. I had this opportunity to invest in this company, and since I've done it, I've totally forgot the name, but what they do is you die in their facility, and they pump your body full of 20 different things. Antifreeze is one of them. They preserve your brain, your consciousness, basically. They believe that your consciousness is in your brain. They've successfully done this with a rabbit, a pig, and a human brain. And then they store it for as long as it takes. They believe in 30 to 50 years, they'll be able to put it in something, maybe a computer, maybe another human body, a cadaver, something like that, and then bring you back to life. This is not a science fiction novel. This is legit, and it's MIT Tech, man. And so let's say that it's 200 years, but it's time now. It's time for you, as we understand it, to depart from this world. When you look back on your legacy, what is it that you said, okay, well done, me, well done? Like with total peace.
Yeah.
What is it that you need?
You know what I need? I need to know that the technology, particularly that I'm working on now with Mr. Rao, it was successful. And successful means that it impacted people's lives in a positive way. Hopefully, it was part of this period of time with regard to the internet, which, changed the conversation and brought about a new way which people could control their overall internet experience and the way they interact with one another. I would call that a success.
So where then does maybe personal life, family, where does that all come in on your hierarchy of fulfillment?
It's interesting, Trevor. This is company number 3 for me, and I founded all 3 companies with my wife. I have.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, and people are always amazed that we have been able to live harmoniously when we live together, work together, the whole deal, parent together. We have one son, and he means the world to me. And I love talking to him about these very types of things, and how to be an innovator, and how to create something, and how to add value to the community, and making sure that he always thinks about making a difference to make the world a better place in his own way, whatever that is, and encouraging him to do so. So I think it's part of who we all are, right?
So I had a chat yesterday with Jason Cisneros. He's a buddy that lives in the same state as me. And he talked about his framework, over 3 bankruptcies, failed marriages. He's learned through failure what his framework is. Now, one of the things that's fascinating is that we as a species can contemplate the fact that we are self-aware about the fact that we are self-aware, which is like, what does that even mean? But long story short, what it allows us to do is observe others and then almost project ourselves into them, learn the lessons to some degree that we would learn and move forward. And that's the value, I think, of when other people fail, yeah, and openly talk about it. So his framework for life, his view, he's all about legacy now, and he has a series of things that if this project or person or opportunity doesn't meet these criteria, if it doesn't further my agenda, right, which for him is the charities that he's involved in now, then he doesn't get involved. I find it interesting that the people that I have met in my life, the people who have a framework for life, typically are successful. And it's my own theory that it's because Maslow's hierarchies for needs, and it doesn't have to be Maslow's, it's just your hierarchy of needs in general. You don't really care about a framework if you're trying to put food on the table. You're just any way to put food on the table, that's what you're going to do. What's your framework? What do you seek? And what is it? How do you identify things to remove from your life? How do you identify opportunities to add onto your plate?
I think what drives me the most, Trevor, is innovation, and particularly as it pertains to technology. I mean, I think that's one of my biggest drivers. Obviously, being a father is a big driver for me on the personal side. I think if I were to simplify it and say what are the two biggest things that I'm always thinking about, it's one is innovation and creation of the technology and platform that I'm working on, and then being a father and making sure I'm a positive role model and making sure that I'm guiding my son properly. So those are the things that I look for. If they further those two bits of an agenda that I have, I guess those are the things that make the greatest impact.
And what's the emotion associated with those? And I'll back up a little bit and maybe give you some context. I studied philosophy in school, and something that resonated with me was the Stoic idea of eudaimonia. Everything we do because, which we do because, which we do because, and ultimately it gives you eudaimonia, or people translate it happiness, tranquility, peace, whatever you want to say. It's that feeling of, the world is wonderful. It's that sensation. So what emotion or what sensation or whatever do you experience when your framework for life is being fulfilled upon?
Yeah, I definitely experience happiness and pleasure. I was unhappy as an attorney because it was all conflict, and that was the primary emotion. And I think anyone that goes into law school always goes, well, I'm going to make a difference because I'm going to represent people, and I'm going to represent whether it's people or companies or what have you, and I'm going to make a difference because I'm going to be an advocate for people. But there was so much conflict in the law that it certainly, while it may fulfill some people, it didn't fulfill me. And I found my fulfillment in actually, thinking about problems and solving those problems in a very creative way by using technology, particularly as it pertains to the internet. And that definitely fulfills me. And I love talking about that with my team and inspiring, hopefully, that their own entrepreneurial and innovative juices, if you will, when they think about problems and how to make, things better and how our technology can be used in new and exciting ways, and making sure that we're creating the best possible experience for our users.
So when you are receiving the exact opposite of that, and what I mean by that is when absolutely nothing is working despite your tremendous efforts, when it's outside of your control, but as an entrepreneur, obviously you never think that. You think everything is within your control. When you're curled up on the fetal position in the ground because the emotions have now become physical and you don't want anyone to see you, especially not your wife and your kids, and you're in that state of just sheer what is going on, what do you do?
Wow, what a deep question, Trevor. I think the interesting part about it is maybe I'm a little further down the entrepreneurial timeline than some of your guests may have been. I kind of I haven't, knock on wood, gotten into that position in a while. I think every entrepreneur definitely goes through that, maybe in the first period in their first, first company or two. And I think that, not that I haven't had those pressures. In fact, those pressures are 10 times greater. I think the difference for me now at this point in my career and in company number three is I fully expect those things to come along.
Okay.
And so, because I fully expect those, oh my God, I could have never anticipated this thing to have happened, you know, in some weird way, I'm prepared for it, even though I don't know what it is. You know what I mean? It
Yeah.
comes along, but you're like, yeah, I was expecting this crazy moment to happen. And I'm going to tackle it in the ways that I tackled all the others before, and we're going to just deal with it head on. And I deal with it with a different vigor and a different philosophy and a different approach, because I expected it to happen. I expected things to go completely haywire.
What is the one thing though that is hard for you to deal with? Let me share with you mine. Um, for years it was money, man. The idea of having to make payroll and not knowing from day A to AB whether or not I would have enough money to make payroll. I lost years of my life and most of the hairs on my head over that. And so when those days passed, like if I'm having a bad day, all I do is remember those days when I wasn't sure if I was going to make payroll. All is good, man.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't matter how bad it is. I don't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
That for me, that was what was debilitating. And it's funny because I grew up where money was not an issue, not because we had it. We didn't have any of it. And when you don't have any of it, it has no meaning in your life. And I think that, and my wife came from the exact opposite arena. Her dad, was doing 8 figures a year with his construction company. And so they had money. And so, all of a sudden I was in this world where I grew up believing that money didn't matter. And now it matters so much to me because I want to fulfill the measure of my creation. And I believe that for me, that's in entrepreneurship and the ideas that it allows and the achievements that people can bring about it. Like, entrepreneurs are the new explorers of the exploration age. They're the thinkers of the Renaissance age. They're the farmers of the agricultural age. We're the ones
Correct.
that move the race forward right now. And I like being a part of that. And I think many people, now that I've identified that, I made sure that I fulfilled that need so that for years, if needs be, it wouldn't be an issue. But for you, you may not be experiencing that now, but what was it? What was your Achilles tendon?
It was very similar. I think every entrepreneur has had that. A similar story for me is, I was very resistant to buying our first. We had a townhome, but I was very resistant to buying a home for the longest time because I just couldn't. The first business early on, I just couldn't push it to that level. It just wasn't quite there, and it would be, and I went through that first .com boom and bust. So during that period of time, I was like, God, I really don't know about this. Payroll always gets met, but it's like right there. And there were points in time where, I couldn't pay myself many a time. And I was like, I said to my wife, Becky, I was like, Becky, I don't want to buy a house just now. And she's like, no, I really want to buy a home. We really need it. It's been long enough, and we hadn't had our son at that point. But I know that's what was on her mind ultimately. So I was like, okay, and we broke down, we bought the home, and the very next month we couldn't pay ourselves. And I was like, this is exactly what I was worried about.
Yeah.
But it goes back to exactly what you were saying and kind of what I was saying earlier. Once you've gone through those periods as an entrepreneur and you've experienced that type of, nightmarish panic type stuff, as you come along, the scenarios are much bigger. They're huge compared to that. That's nothing now. I wouldn't even sweat that in a heartbeat. That's nothing, compared to the challenges that you face when you're trying to do much bigger things and you're dealing with much larger teams and much bigger payrolls. And, different levels of partnership and costs, and you're playing in a whole different sandbox and league. But you expect to have adversity. You expect to have failures. You expect to have to conquer these challenges. And because you expect it, you now know how to approach any given problem that presents itself.
Yes, I love that. So, another word for that, the expectation, is negative visualization. And I'm a closet stoic. I find it an excellent framework for my life. And for me, negative visualization has worked best. And if for the listeners, I don't know, just Google it. But it's worked best in the extreme areas of my life: health, family, business, but especially as a father, because I can get so wrapped up in what I'm doing that I misidentify what my children are saying to me. When I should be hearing them say, "Hey, Dad, I need to play catch with you because I had a bad day at school." I don't hear that. I hear something different, and so it's so powerful to experience in your mind what the loss would be, or to even expect it, because it allows you then to prioritize correctly. So I love that, man. That's so good. So, kind of coming to a wrap up, I've got an ethereal question for you, and I ask this. It's funny because at the beginning I said don't ask the same 10 questions. I ask this on most of the podcasts because I'm fascinated by the answers. Where you are today and where you were as an attorney. Okay, so those two lives, very separate. How much of them were what you desired, truly, authentically, and how much of them did you think you were supposed to desire?
Wow. Very easy for me to say that with regard to my life as an attorney, it was what I thought I was supposed to be. Where I am today is definitely where not only I'm supposed to be, where I want to be. I'm here. I love being an entrepreneur. I love being an innovator. I love finding new solutions to problems. Absolutely, my life when I was an attorney, I guess I'm still an attorney. I keep my license. But when I worked as an attorney was more about what I felt like my family expected of me and where I was supposed to be.
That's interesting. So when I have friends that they get married or close people to me, I give them 2 books. And they're books that got me through stages in my life that were necessary or ongoing. The first one is The Richest Man in Babylon by George Clason. And it's such a simple classic book. But for me, in post-2008, when I was knocking doors again, like literally selling stuff door to door, that's kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But it got me. It's what got me through that. And so I wasn't scraping the bottom of the barrel. I was doing what the bottom of the barrel scrapers do, but I was doing it at a super high level, eventually leading to everything else that I was able to do. That book helped me there. And the second one is A Guide to the Good Life, The Ancient Art of Stoic Joy. I try to read that once a year. Sometimes I miss it, but it's a great, friendly reminder. It's written, in American English, so you don't have to try and read some American English translation of Greek text and all this. Those are 2 books that I give to people I care about, to people that you care about sincerely. What 2 books would you give them, and why?
Wow, really interesting. I probably would give them Malcolm Gladwell's Outliers, primarily because I think that it's such a cool book and it talks about, outliers in so many different situations. And I believe personally that we're all unique, special, and outliers in our own way, in our own giftings. And I think that book can really bring that out of people, to identify it within themselves. What are their talents and how can those talents be maximized for something really good? So that would be one. And then the other book for me, and you asked it earlier, and again, it's a very personal thing, but the Bible. Even though my family's from India, I'm a Christian, and uh, for me, it's a great, uh, you know, it's a great resource. It's a great tool. It's a great part of my life that can certainly lift you up when you're down and can restore faith in the things that you're doing. So there you go.
Love it. Love it. So, for people that are listening, how can they find you, or where can they find you, Arvind, and what's the best way to connect with you?
So they can obviously find me on Mr. Owl, and they can reach out to me there. That's primarily what I spend all of my time doing, is working on making this technology something special. So reaching out to me at Mr. Owl is fine. LinkedIn is also a great way to get me. I look at things like Twitter every day, although I don't tweet a ton myself. I could be messaged there because I'm on it all the time. How's that?
Love it. Love it. Hey, Arvind, I really appreciate. Thanks for dealing with my devil's advocacy. I never meant to offend if I said anything that was offensive or whatever.
No,
I just
not at
wanted to
all.
have an engaging conversation about that particular topic, especially right now as it's hyper relevant. So thanks for putting up with that, for jumping on. I'd love to follow up, maybe in 6 months or so, and see
That'd be lovely.
what's happened, and catch up if you're amenable.
No, that sounds great to me, Trevor. It truly was a pleasure. I enjoyed it thoroughly. So thank you for having me on your show.
Absolutely. Thank you, Arvind, and thank you, listeners. We'll see you tomorrow on the Trevor Chapman Show. Hey, everybody, Trevor here. As you know, we do not sell sponsorship on the podcast. I wanted to make sure that I was never prostituting the value and giving anything less than passion and interest. And that I was never doing it for any reason that could potentially distract me from my original mission with the podcast, which is to connect with great people and allow others to connect with them as well. And once you start making money on something, oftentimes your mission changes slightly. It just has to. It's the nature of business. However, so as a result of that, I've been self-funding the podcast, both with time, my team's time and everything. But there is a way that you can help support us. I am launching a black card mastermind, a black label mastermind, a black internal mastermind, whatever you want to call it. It's going to be a VIP mastermind wherein you'll have access basically to absolutely everything that I've ever published. You'll have access to information that I've never published. You'll have direct contact with me. And I'm bringing in incredible people like partners of mine. Ryan Davies sold Found.com for $100 million. He's the CEO of Curza. Other guys like Dewey McKay, the COO of MX, that took them from a few million to the largest banking software on the planet, and other partners that I have had or will have. I'm bringing them in and curating the best mastermind, the best group, the best location for information all around on the internet. And this is the Trevor Chapman Mastermind membership program. Within there, I'll be showing you how I went from 0 to a top 5 podcast in 20 days. Within there, I'll show you how I went from 0 to 1 million followers in 45 days. Within there, I'll be sharing with you all of my secrets. So please support this by going to trevorchapman.com/podcast VIP. Again, trevorchapman.com/podcast VIP. And for those of you who are listening, it has not officially launched yet. As such, it is 50% off. trevorchapman.com/podcast VIP. Let's move.